the slightly more positive news around for SMEs, and take this as you will. But this is straight from the BBC. So, environmental rules reviewed for small house builders. Environmental rules that force developers in England to improve wildlife habitats could be eased under government plans to make it easier to build homes on smaller sites. The government is reviewing biodiversity net gain (BNG) requirements under which builders must compensate for the loss of any nature on housing developments. Ministers say they are considering how costs can be reduced for smaller house builders whilst also delivering habitats for wildlife. So what do you think here, guys? Are they essentially just rolling back BNG for us sort of SME developers? That's obviously going to be helpful. Do you think it's that helpful? Do you think it's like a little thing, like kind of taking the sprinkles off the top rather than actually going for the layers of the cake and really making things easier?
I've got an opinion based in Wales. We have a different system, and Wales haven't come out and suggested the same as of yet. But I know firsthand that ecology has caused a significant disruption to planning permissions, and the problem is that they've basically weighted it with the same importance as building new homes. And whilst I understand the principle behind that, the issue they have is that a common sense, pragmatic approach hasn't been taken. Because when I've spoken to some senior officials in Welsh government, for example, they expected, a common sense, pragmatic or solution to come to approach to be happening. But in reality, if you give an ecology consultee basically carte blanche, which is what they have kind of effectively in Wales to some point, because it's more subjective in Wales, on the importance of they're just objecting to development because the way it is, if you can't prove a betterment, then the answer is no. But some sites, especially the smaller sites as well, where you just don't have the space, like we're a brownfield developer, and some of the ecology on sites is what's come up over time, maybe because of neglect as well. Whereas the density gets absolutely hammered. You don't have enough space, etc. But more importantly, that the issue I have with it all is that the authority was taken away effectively from, like, planning officers don't have the authority to override like ecology's the consultee's opinion in Wales anyway. So I think if they simplify the process here, it would definitely improve consent. It would definitely make life easier. Like we've got an allocated site now that's taken 2.5 years to finally get an approval at planning committee, and the ecologist was still objecting, even though everyone else isn't, and that was touch and go in planning committee, but the planning officer and the head of planning recommended it for approval, even because we tried every approach and it took us 2 years to do so, and we still couldn't get them to remove their objection. They were just hanging it on this biodiversity net benefit issue. So yeah, I think it is a problem, and that's why they're looking to simplify it for smaller, and I think it will help. I know some developers in England, I don't know, Jack, if you've come across it, where a tree was already chopped down, but the stump was classed as high ecology value, and was that they wouldn't move from a significant sum needing to be paid, like from a credit, rendering the site unviable. It's just like, I mean, that's not really, they didn't chop the tree down, but the stump remained. So it's like, what do you do? So do you want a stump there, or should we actually build houses? It's like, what do you?
It's super difficult, isn't it? It's basically a bunch of hippies that put a load of ruling in a very complicated market, which is construction. And it's new modelling, so there's always going to be flaws. Like when they were socialising the idea of BNG, they were like, we want 100% allocation of improvement of biodiversity net gain per site. And actually, when you think about it, if there's one little hedge tree plantation and you put another one next to it, that's 100% improvement. So then they had to regrade it and review it. And I think it's now sort of in the teething phase of becoming a valuable, well thought out process. And it's still not there. If a pallet, like a pallet on the bottom of materials so you can forklift it up, is left on site, that's considered as some form of biodiversity, because like woodlouse can get in there and make little nests and all sorts of crap. So it needs completely refining. I think that, at some point, where does it stop? Because it's almost near impossible to get the allocation on the site. I've not actually heard of any single developer improving their own diversity on their own site, so much so that they don't need an off-site contribution. And that to me means the grading's off, because you're taking a parcel of land and you should improve its biodiversity, and that should be achievable on the land that you're dealing with. Equally, when you offset it, where does that offsetting go? Like, it's all well and good offsetting it, but you're then potentially tarnishing, good developable plots of land for the future. I do think it needs easing. I also think it needs to be always. I think all ecology should be done post planning. So once you've got the planning approved, you do all of the nuances with the assessments, because there's no point in doing it unless you've got consent in hand. And I think that's also a really good start. It should move to post planning. I think most things should move to post planning, if I'm honest.
Do you mean kick them into the validation phase? Is that what you're saying? Sorry, into the pre-commencement phase.
Yeah, either as a special condition or like almost like a building control phase. So you get the consent, it gets handed over to building control. Building control go, oh, hang on a second, you need to submit your B&G requirements. Then you go and submit it, and that prevents all of the councils having to review all of these assessments pre-planning, which gives them more time to give tickets for planning, and then it's actually reviewed by someone that understands it.
Do you think that could still create a bottleneck, though? It kind of could kick that can to just the next stage where you still can't get on site without still discharging it at that point.
Yeah, but the delays are in planning, right? So if you have if you get your planning ticket, you then can, I believe, can put, let's say you've got 10 planning applications, right? If you're doing all of these assessments in Reading, you could spend, if I was doing a 2-unit new build, two houses new build site, I'll probably do 40k on planning and assessments. Out of the actual planning cost is probably about 1,500 quid, right? So I've spent £38,500 on design, all the assessments, so daylight, sunlight, air quality, noise, transport, flood, ecology, B&G, all of these various things that you have to go into consideration for. But if the majority of those, like transport is a really obvious one, because if you cannot get on site, fair enough. That's in my opinion a really important one that probably needs to be pre-planning. But splitting these out, and also a planning officer could probably digest a report around highways and understand it and diligently make a decision on that. Whereas if you're going into detail like the biodiversity of a site and how it's implemented, I think that should just be. It's a factual figure of what you've got to achieve. You can off-site contribute. So why isn't that done after planning once you've got your ticket?
As long as, and that's the key bit there. As long as the development is approved, and that's like a kind of, I should say, like it's a it could be a Grampian kind of condition, really. With the wording of it is really important. It's like it needs to be reasonable, where it's kind of like 106 type of thing. It's the planning is permitted, but this is the final, the obligation you need to pay to get to discharge the condition. The problem you've got at the moment with ecology is because the step process is that you need to prove that you can do it on site, is that they can't grant you planning, because that has a direct impact on the site layout, etc. And the change, and that then requires reconsult into any changes to the layout requires consultation to other constituencies other than just ecologists. It goes back to placemaking, it goes back to highways, it goes back to secure by design or neighbourhoods, etc. And then you keep getting this cycle of constant reconsulting and constant delays. I think it's a big problem where the government really need to set what their priority is. You can't have, you can't really build and not have a negative impact on ecology. And we've got a site now which we were in planning before Wales brought in an emergency policy amendment, which included all sites already in the planning system. And we've been actively told by planning officers that 12 months ago we would have granted this. 12 months ago we would have granted this. And the step process is: can you get biodiversity net benefit on site? The answer is no, because it's an infill brown site. His whole old historic use is brownfield, and it's kind of like crap land, but it's got a ecology value because obviously now wildlife around there. If you zoom out of that area, it is surrounded by acres and acres and hectares of undevelopable, unzoned, high ecology value areas of significant importance. But that has no weight in. And then the next step in the process, if you can't benefit on site, you have to benefit off site. But all the off site land around there is owned by the council. Speak to the council, like, right, we need to work with you now to improve your area. And they're like, well, we don't need any improvement. You're like, right, okay. So what do we do then? And we're like, well, and then the third step is we now need to provide a financial contribution. So, right, okay. So we offer a financial contribution, but then they say you can't provide a financial contribution unless it's going to a very specific cause and you quantify what that cause is and it's agreed. But we can't do that because nobody wants in the local vicinity upgrades there's no contribution to give. So then the unintended consequence of the policy they brought out, because of that, the way it is worded, is that it's stuck in our position. Obviously, in England, they would go on down then to credits. And I think that if simplifying the process and making it cheaper, it's going to be one of the only things they can do to really help further unlock more developments.
Every week, all four of us get around a mic, talk about property and business. So make sure you go subscribe to the Ground Up Podcast.